German philosopher Hegel once mentioned that we pay too much attention to the ordinary, trivial interest in our surrounding environment and daily life, that we tend to neglect our inner spirit. But what if it goes the opposite way? What if the voices in our mind occupy so much space that it disrupts the rhythm of our lives? I mean, it's not like we could control what we think anyway, right? I was initially planning to talk about how we could all connect with positive mindsets and how I resolved my issues with mental health. But then I thought if this was indeed the way I want to go about it. Did I actually solve my problem to a point where I could give a doable solution to others to follow? No, I couldn't, because I was and still am fighting with anxiety disorder. So today, you guys are very special for me, since I'm opening up myself for the very first time. All of you are my listeners, and that for me is very precious. Now, going back a couple of years, I moved here from Shanghai. It was such a massive transition for me because Shanghai is always so prosperous and busy. Well, it could be a little quiet sometimes in Maple Ridge. The sudden change of environment was really overwhelming for me, and I felt a strong sense of emptiness and a lack of belonging. I wasn't able to adapt to it for so long since I missed everything in Shanghai so much. At the same time, I was also receiving a lot of stress from the increasing workload at school and by my own urge to excel at everything. These mixed sensations of pressure, frequent loneliness, and emptiness started to take away my energy bit by bit. But that was just the beginning. Later on, the stress became something more disruptive. It would get so bad on many days that I felt ill and wasn't able to go to school. I get concerned for the smallest things, like by the thought of going to sleep, waking up in the morning, getting a call from someone, getting dressed to go outside, knowing that it will rain soon, and the list goes on nonstop. Though I suppose that the stress will finally disappear once I get some relaxed time during summer or winter break, it just got even more bad. I would feel guilty just because I wasn't doing anything important and have severe mental breakdowns. After doing research on several sources, I was certain it wasn't merely stress. It was more like anxiety. Think of it as a bomb. It could go off any moment. And when the bomb does go off, I simply cannot control it anymore. A ringing sound gradually builds in my ears, and tumultuous voices envelops my senses. Every time this happens, I knew I needed to isolate myself immediately from others because it just felt so overwhelming to the point I couldn't breathe. Every time this happens, it felt like my world was collapsing apart and things will not get better no matter what I do. The worst part about this was probably the bad habits I developed. I would lock myself in a room and binge watch YouTube and Netflix and scroll through anything, literally anything on my phone. In fact, I wasn't looking at anything properly. I was just trying to escape from my thoughts. Now, as weird as that might sound, my biggest fear is actually facing my mind. As life gets busier, my mind sort of just accumulates all the concerns and negativities, and it keeps on growing by the minute. Because I cannot fight with them, I give myself the excuse to just keep scrolling through my phone and laptop. At night, I would stare blankly at the ceiling for hours and hours, tears rolling down my face, emotionless. It was almost impossible to break this vicious cycle. I lived on with displeasure and no further regards of how I truly felt. Maybe deep inside, I knew this wasn't what I wanted, but there just seemed as if there was nothing to help me with my situation. I had to admit that I was an absolute mess. All those feelings dreaded me to a point where I felt like my soul flew away, left with an empty shell. I felt like I was holding on to something where all I saw below was darkness. The pain I felt deep inside wasn't something that could be explained to others easily. When I first openly communicated the possibility that I had this disorder to my parents, they suggested I go see a therapist. But I was certain they didn't truly believe in it. Regardless, I still went to see the therapist, hoping for a long-term solution that would take away all those horrible feelings. The therapist did give me some suggestions, but unfortunately, none of them worked well because my mind simply could not calm down when I tried to sleep. Other people I talked to would just assume that I'm stressed about school, and this is a stage that all teenagers go through. And that honestly sucked. It sucked when people say, oh, everyone has anxiety, when it truly is not the case. I want them to understand that there is a clear distinction between stress and anxiety, and oftentimes people get confused between the two. Although both might cause similar sensations at times, stress is mainly caused by our external issues, while the origin of anxiety comes from our internal issues. Due to how similar they might sound, a lot of people who do not suffer from this disorder might misdiagnose themselves, and others who do not get the help they needed. I guess in other people's opinion, I was just stressed out. What sucked even more was when people tell me things are going to be fine, because only I knew things were not fine. I realized how alone I was going through this problem and how much I wanted people to at least acknowledge the existence of it instead of thinking that it is a stage that all teenagers go through. I wanted those who once neglected the significance of these issues to know that just because you didn't go through this doesn't mean I won't. For me, anxiety is a devil of my mind that is actually a part of me I could never get rid of. Although other people's reaction to what I was going through significantly impacted my emotions, which was already in a terrible state, I would say that I did something wrong too. To seem like I was okay, I would force my mind into thinking things or behaving a certain way that would make me appear more normal. In other words, I would think in a way that makes my mind numb and makes my mind stop layering with these negative concerns for a short moment. When I talked to my therapist, I would just say something like, I'm sleep deprived because I'm stressed about school, when there's just so much more behind that. Afterwards, I would just hate on myself and think, why did you act that way? Why didn't you tell the whole truth? You know how in your diary you're supposed to write things you truly felt and little things only you knew about, right? But whenever I write in my diary, it would become something completely meaningless and honestly kind of stupid. Something like, today is a great day. I did a lot of homework. It felt like something was stopping me from writing out my struggles, which later on I realized was my fear that these struggles would be exposed into the world in some way, and that made me feel really insecure. I felt even more vulnerable from the criticism other people gave me, and I gave myself. At that time, I was drowned in an ocean of negativity. I don't really understand how a lot of people found their ways out of their mental illnesses all of a sudden. It sounds simple to do, but in reality, it is extremely difficult. My mind was used to negativity. How can I become positive out of nowhere? Now, I believe that there are two types of people. Those who use their mental illnesses as an excuse for self-pity, and those who sincerely want to get better. Since anxiety is not something that could be fixed right away or forever, it was all pretty difficult until I started trying to adjust myself, because I actually really want to get better. Though people might say things like, oh, sleeping earlier, eating healthier, exercising more could be easily achieved, the process was long and difficult for me because I was so tuned to my old habits. I was going to give up several times, and my problem with insomnia still continued. But I did realize something interesting. Whenever I got really busy, I didn't have time to occupy myself with those negative concerns and images. Whenever I've completed a task, I felt more happy and relieved, not because I feel less stressed, but because I learned something new and I was improving myself. I started to think about the little instances that could make me feel happy even for just a moment. Things like dancing and crossing off the task I've completed on a to-do list can make me feel really relaxed. Now, this doesn't mean we have to keep doing things to help us get better. I believe that anxiety is an imbalance of our body and mind. We could certainly cope with it, but it will always be there, and we can't really take it away completely. To be honest, I still experience it frequently. The heavy heartbeats, the nauseous feeling, the chaotic layering of thoughts, and occasionally, the life is purposeless and everything is falling apart monologue I do in my mind. But the thing is, life goes on, and we need to move on too. And the way in doing that is to be brave ourselves in facing our issues with the support from others and the knowledge that a lot of us are fighting the same war. We all seek for acknowledgement and mental support. It's a natural part of our humanity. But it makes a significant impact on those who are suffocating from their problems and assume that they're going through this alone. To let them know that it is okay to feel down, and we can't force positivity all the time. For me, when I browse through what other people have commented on their stories of mental health, I could sincerely resonate with them, and I was able to tell myself that I am not alone. This journey of realizations might take a long time, and it certainly is not something that appears out of nowhere. But what you need to remember is that it will get easier eventually. Thinking back, I just realized how much importance or definition I gave to those feelings. We can't tell the voices in our mind to shut up, but we could certainly choose not to follow them. You might have noticed that I don't have a shocking or touching story to share. But I want every one of you to know that what we undergo is only unique to us, and there really is nothing to compare about. But for me, it is because of these small realizations that gradually made me see light and hope. I still experience anxiety, but at least I am able to tell myself out loud that I have anxiety, I am not okay, but at least I am not alone. Sorry if this talk made you stressed in any way, but I'm glad it's over because it made me super stressed for the entire summer. Thank you.